our conversation today is obviously inspired by being part of the NFT LA conference, listening to speakers, which I don't know about you, I have very mixed feelings about kind of the speakers, but it's such a new space, and we're seeing the results of a new space and a new technology coming into action that people are throwing more opinion than knowledge in some cases, or sometimes totally off track or very on track with that process.
So they had some brands there. They had Bear Paint of all people and CAA, and they were talking about how brands can bridge the gap between the metaverse and current whatever, just their current existence and the metaverse. And that was, I think there were some actual insights there, and potentially, as weird as it sounds, Bear Paint understands the metaverse better than most brands. So it was pretty funny.
So the topic today, we're going to jump into NFTs a little bit because it's such a hot topic. Everyone at least knows how to spell NFT, if not know what non-fungible token even means. But the process of the NFTs and what it's done to our industry is create a little bit of disruption, some chaos, a lot of speculation, but mostly it's left us thinking: is this something that's evolving, something we should be involved in? Should NFTs change my business at all? Right. So we're gonna ask that question today. And I think when we were talking about this earlier, you and I had two different perspectives of what the value of NFTs are and what that might mean if you are in the NFT space. So let's even just start with the most basic question though. Should NFTs change the type of work we're doing? Let's start with you. Kind of like, what's your thoughts here, and why did you choose this as the question?
Yeah. So I think so far we've seen a lot of blunders. We've seen brands that don't know what they're doing. We've seen people lose tons of money. I really like NFTs. I think they're pretty game-changing technology. I think crypto is a game-changing technology. But if you're not ready, or let's see, the short answer is I don't think you should change your business completely to pursue NFTs if you don't know what you're doing. There's a couple of people that I've talked to in our Rifting group. Colin the other day, he's like, yeah, I got like thousands of dollars. He's like, yeah, I started back in October. I won't speak for him, but he just said like, yeah, I've been pretty successful. I know what I'm doing, and he can see those opportunities pretty clearly.
So you're saying we shouldn't let NFTs change our business specifically, but you also said it's an evolving technology. So real quickly, why don't you explain what it is about the technology that's evolving, and then what you think the business of NFTs would be that it doesn't have an impact or should not have an impact on your overall business plan?
Yeah, let's apply this to like VR and AR. So if you're the kind of person that is going to go all in and say, we're just going to be like AR studio now, we're going to help brands, Shopify brands, do AR products, and we're just going to only do that. If you're that kind of person and you see NFTs and say, oh, we're only going to do Web3, we're going to do NFTs, I think there's room for that, but our particular motion industry needs to mature a little bit more before I would recommend that on a whole scale.
Okay. So I'll take the opposite side. There are a lot of great things you're saying, and I'll agree with that at some point. But just for the sake of this conversation, let's discuss what the opportunities for NFTs are and what should change about your business. To me, I use this metaphor a lot. Is it feels again like the process I went through in the late 90s when the internet was somewhat not very relevant, especially in the brand and marketing space, and then became very relevant in the marketing space. That if you ignore this moment, there's going to be potential growth and opportunities that you can't see, you're not investing in, and those who are will soon become more relevant in this space. So if you think about what the world has adapted to and changed because of the internet, a Web3 protocol allows for a different type of ownership in branding and marketing and kind of like new opportunities of IP. Let's say is what we're seeing right now. Here's the problem you're going to have, and it's some of my frustration with this conference, is that right now the space is so immature that the belief is that NFTs are really, one, fly by night, don't get into it, not going to change at all, or two, it's the same as Web 2, the current internet. And that process of not leaning into it really helps, that really cuts short the opportunities that you're introducing to your clients, and therefore not becoming an expert in the field at all. You're just basically becoming a follower. So when you're ready, I'll take your thing. When you're ready, or if you want to engage, you really do have to lean in and understand it. If you hold back and you don't get the nuance or an opportunity that's coming right now, that's what's going to pass you up as this thing evolves.
Yeah, and maybe some of where we started this conversation yesterday was because I was talking to a guy 2 nights ago, a friend of ours, and he said, I think if you're going to get into NFTs, he was just speaking as an individual, like trader or whatever. If you're going to get into NFTs, you need to go 100% nothing else, like quit your job, like put your money in 100%. And that kind of scared me. And I brought that up with Tim. I was like, hey, what do you think about that? Especially like from a business owner perspective. And I started, maybe potentially you could execute this as a passion project or start something as dip your toe in the water, and maybe even hire like someone at your company that's in charge of the project. But my perspective, I think at this moment, is to say you as an owner, you don't have to quit and 100% go into NFTs, because that kind of scares me to be able to recommend that, or to say like, come join our cult, like sell Mary Kay. Like that's kind of what it feels like to me. So maybe that's where I'm coming from here.
It does feel very much like you're talking about a religion when you're talking about NFTs. There's a whole different language. There's a whole buy-in process. And I'll say once again, I'm going to put some parameters on what I'm saying, because I don't want someone to think I'm gone off the rails in any way here. But I heard we asked last night at the Qohort dinner, we were asking business owners, when given a chance to take what's yours, to follow through with what that you were called to do, or lean into a moment, what would that be? What holds you back? And one of the things that we heard people say that hold them back is, I've conformed to the current. And even though we were talking about, for example, if you were owner of a motion design company, but you wanted to get into original content, how difficult it is, because you are really maintaining an original design, or your motion design company, and not doing original content. And that conversion is very difficult. So the same is here, is that if you understand the space and want to take advantage of the opportunities to stay in one world and try to bridge into another world, sometimes creates that same confusion or clash instead of dropping and moving forward. And that is really difficult decision. And I'll say very foolish for some people and very brilliant for others. Walking one of my clients through this process and the work that we've been doing, going from zero to one of the big players in the field, is the process of recognizing what has changed, what the opportunities are. And then because we leaned into it and started asking different questions, we created a whole new offering that no one else touched. But we had to know we were looking for that and not just being a copycat. So that's the moment that's in front of us. I think people are excited about, but that is, when I say you have to go all in, you have to actually go all in order to get to the other side of making something that's original.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we heard this on stage when we went to the Gareb Shamus talk. He's the Comic-Con founder, Wizard Magazine. And he had on stage with him another guy. I talked about this yesterday too. He had on stage another guy that worked for, I believe, Activision, and he was a director that did the trailers for the video game franchises and other big franchises like Marvel. And he quit what he was doing to start an NFT project that was an original comic. Thank you. Is it off all the time? No, you're good. Okay. He quit what he was doing for his clients to pursue an NFT project of his own that was a comic. And he gave that same advice, actually, that Tim is just giving us now, that he said, if I were to keep taking client work, I would never have time for my own IP. And when we zoom out, I think you may have a point that we hear that story quite a bit for creatives. And I feel it myself sometimes. So like, oh, I want to work on this passion project or this thing that really drives me, but I have money to make, or there might be more money to make for a client and it's attractive. So I think maybe I just get a little nervous about telling someone to go all in on something like that, maybe where you have more perspective on that.
Maybe more perspective, or maybe I'm just crazier. I don't know. So let's talk about a reasonable response, because I'll say once again, listening to probably the most frustrating conversation that we all listened to was the Mark Cuban session. And it was absolutely ridiculous. Not that Mark Cuban doesn't know what he's talking about, because he as an individual kind of held his ground and was asked questions, he understood it. But the other players on stage with him, which was one of his business partner, or the thing he invested in, and then some content makers, the original creator of Entourage on HBO, one of his actor friends who does podcasts, and then some old actor named Charlie Sheen. I don't know, I never heard of the guy. But what was ridiculous about it is that the three other players, the content creators, admitted that they only heard about NFTs 3 weeks ago. And the minute they started talking about what they were doing, I thought to myself, I think they're talking about television at an NFT conference. And television is not a breakthrough technology. It doesn't live on a blockchain, doesn't allow ownership. And then the other contributors were talking about, yeah, we can just get rid of the middleman, but use our app so that you can go through us to Facebook, Google, YouTube, and Twitch. And I was like, so we're getting rid of the middleman ownership to become the middleman through an app. And you thought, like, this is the problem with the NFT space, is that people don't know it well enough to give advice. And when you hear that kind of conversation, a reasonable kind of advice you would say is, if that's your understanding, please don't lean all the way into this thing. This is not what it's about. You're totally off the mark. It's not clear what the offering is. You're really trying to leverage your current knowledge base into a brand new piece of technology. That'd be like talking about the Sears catalog and comparing that to the internet and saying, oh, it's like the Sears catalog. Like, it's not. It's like Sears that invented the catalog, but it's not the catalog. It's this thing called the internet.
Yeah, I feel like we're on a walkie-talkie. Over,
Yeah.
back and forth. I read this book. There was a speaker at Promax, and he called himself a futurist. And I went to the talk, and it was actually kind of interesting. And I bought his book, and I read the book. And the book was called Digital Darwinism. And he talked about how different trends sort of evolve and how history repeats itself in different forms. And he said the first TV shows were them just reading the news, reading a newspaper. And the first radio programs were them, no, what was it? The first radio programs were reading the newspaper, and the first TV shows were them broadcasting plays, because it was an old form, but a new, I guess, distribution method, if that's what we're calling it. And so maybe that's part of what you're seeing. These legacy players are trying to replicate, not trying, but it's just another echo of that same dynamic. And they don't understand it, so they're just trying to force what they know. Like Quibi, what was that, Quibi? Where they just forced something into a new medium that just didn't work. So if you're going to do that, like Tim said, yeah, we don't think that's the right way. But let me throw this back to you, Tim. Do you think, we're talking about should, so is this NFT thing, broadcast, or this channel, this medium, whatever you want to call it, is this something that is too big to be ignored or too big to be stopped at this point?
Well, that's what I think we are all kind of recognizing, is the whole world is using a word that they don't totally understand. And specifically, the technology itself opens up to like a new world order of ownership or collaboration or opportunity. And that new kind of evolution that's taking place of ownership is the one that is probably can't be ignored. Because specifically what the disruption is. If I were to compare a disruptor or something like silicone chip to the world, you would say, oh, the silicone chip has changed everything, because the processing power that it has behind it and the decision making that you can now put through a computer program allows for new opportunity and a new evolution. In the NFT space, it's not a processor to that degree, but what is happening is that the blockchain itself being decentralized allows for a certain type of visibility and ownership that wasn't there before. Now, what I believe is we're just taking Web 2 products and putting them on Web 3 because, like you're saying, the evolution that takes place, the Darwinism that takes place. But in reality, what I know is that when the internet popped up and whatever was happening, like the search engine of the day was Yahoo, and clearly there wasn't even a Google. But now we know 20 years later that there is an evolution that once it tips over, you can see it and you want to be part of it. If you want to be a leader in a field, I think that's why you have to lean into some of this and ask new questions, because it is here and it is doing something different. So at least to be on top of it. Otherwise, the wave will just run you over.
Yeah, maybe that's all right. Like you don't have to be a leader in NFTs. You could be a leader in your specialty, whether it's stop motion or, I don't know, cell animation, something that's more intriguing to you. Personally, NFTs are intriguing to me because they solve, well, I don't want to say they solve problems because we've yet to see, but there's lots of different things. There's lots of different creative applications. And creativity, it's hard to say that creativity solves the problem sometimes because it can be subjective. So anyway, NFTs are engaging to me because of the new technology that is applied to human problems. And I saw a quote, I was going to bring this up with you on a podcast the next time we do our Nifty Space podcast. The quote was that humans are still humans. So new technology doesn't really change the human problem, that we're still going to try to take advantage of each other and we're still going to try to deceive each other. But I think there's something about this new technology that short circuit some of that by using an actual, like a piece of code or a computer, so that I don't have to trust you that you're going to give me the money, that I can just look and see, oh, the computer has control of that money now and the code is there. I can trust the code because I can verify the code. The computer has control of the money. The computer will give me the money if I do my part in that smart contract. So when you take that dynamic and you can apply it to art and finance and creativity, it creates a new peanut butter and jelly sandwich of sorts that we don't know what it's going to be yet. Just like I bring this up all the time, but we didn't know that we were going to have Uber and Airbnb when the internet and the smartphone were invented.
Okay, so let's convert this to the creative space, because this is the conversation that we have most often is, if I am a creator, what are the opportunities that are in front of me now? Which items should I ignore? And which items are the ones that I should pay attention to?
Isn't that the question? So that's the whole question. Yeah. So you're asking a crackhead if they like crack, because I love crypto. I think NFTs are a great thing, like I just said. But I think we also have to look at the cultural wave that's coming. So we talked about VR and AR, and for a while it was like, oh, a snap filter. Oh, we have Google making this, I forget what they called their smartphone project that they had. And Amazon had that phone that had the holographic. It was like kind of a wave for a while. But I think NFTs are a little bit bigger than that because it's reached farther throughout the stratus layers, strati of our culture, Jimmy Fallon, all the way down to people like me. Whereas AR is like such a specific, people with VR headsets care about it. It's like a video game thing almost. So I think we've seen a wider, like a deeper penetration through the layers of our culture, and a wider penetration throughout different industries, finance and tech and gaming and Twitter and media, and just a different impact than what I would say is another fad. If you're going to say, is this just a fad? Like VR was a fad, or maybe it's not just a fad, but maybe VR has specific applications. But what I'm saying is this is such a wider and deeper wave, I suppose. So maybe that's kind of my position right now.
Okay, so let's pick it up here too, because what's interesting to me working with a Web3 company and the decision making they go through on a weekly basis to keep their product going, keeping it relevant. specifically what I've seen them do, which might be different than a lot of projects out there, is that they're actually doing a weekly release. So it's not unusual for us to call our process an episode. And the thought of like, oh, we're going to keep a relevant storyline happening. We're going to create value throughout the process and kind of drop items piece by piece, revealing pieces of the story as we go along. Even with the thought of like season 1, season 2, season 3, or brand integration. So we are using very kind of existing technology or existing terminology to explain what we're trying to accomplish in this new space. And to your point, the human element really loves it. They love the storytelling aspect. They love the characters that we're revealing. They love the products that we're creating. And then an integration, like bringing Gucci into the space, was something that was unusual, and we could do it in an unusual way. So we have this really gigantic brand that asked the question, how do I get involved? What should I do? And we say, well, what we're going to say, like, well, you're Gucci, you should sell some product. That's what they do for a living. But to say how or where or what the product is, had a strategy, a creative element to it, but also plugged into something that was already existing. To me, if I was a creative person, that's what I'd be excited about today, is that we'll go back to what Mark Cuban wanted to point that he wanted to make, is like, when you get rid of the decision makers that currently hold you back because they don't understand something, and you can integrate straight to your audience and engage that audience immediately because you have a Twitter account or a Discord server. Now you can bypass a lot of those decisions that hold you back and engage directly. In reality, it's very stressful. The filters are also gone. And if you make a mistake, it can be a very costly financial or creative mistake. So that stress moment that people are living in the creative space, as well as the opportunity, are something that I think is creating the addiction you're talking about, the thing that makes it exciting. But specifically to recognize that you can reveal a story. The Huxley guy you talked about yesterday, that's stuff that we knew is doing whatever, some of the big players out there that have the PFP projects, they're recognizing there's a story element to it. And then I think back to who we are, and I think we're storytellers. We've been doing stories for as long as we've been in the industry. I think this world is waiting for us to show up. So we have a tech space waiting for the creatives to show up. Then we have creatives wondering if the tech is relevant. And I think it's that bridge that you and I are most eager to jump into, is to say, well, when they do bridge, whoever decides to bridge, it can be a pretty amazing collaboration. Should we start becoming a conduit as fast as possible?
Yeah, I ran into this guy at the beginning of the conference, and he was a project creator. He has a small Discord server. He has 9,977 tokens, whatever. And he was a very techie person, obviously a developer. And the art was obviously fairly rudimentary, hand-drawn, small variations. And he started talking about the technical details of how you're going to create how they're going to mint new tokens and how they'll interact. And he was so technical. And I was like, okay, great, bro. But this is boring. This is like so technical and boring. And it's not about, the art isn't anything special. And so he's a tech person. And on the other hand, when I talk to some of our creative studio owners, they have these great stories. Like, what if Red Riding Hood was a zombie, was one of the pitches I just heard from one of our guys. And I was like, oh, you just came up with that on the fly, didn't you? But I think there's great potential. I get really excited about that part of it. And one other thing too, that the Huxley guy said, the comic book guy, he said, NFTs are enabling sort of a power transfer. We've talked about this a little bit more power to the creators. And what he said was, that money is already being made, but you just weren't seeing it as much. So why are you getting mad at me when I'm saying the creators have more power? You should be getting mad that you're not getting paid as much as you could be, and those middlemen are sucking it out of you.
That was a pretty interesting conversation to think like, oh wait, what we participated in is $100 billion, $1 trillion industry every year, and we're counting millions or hundreds of thousands sometimes with our production companies. And here you can see where the money is being made and recognize what the participation looks like, and probably more rightly go after that. That was a great point. Ryan Summers asked this question, and I think it might even carry on to what you're saying there too. Ryan said, what's a solid point of entry for a studio owner to start playing in the NFT space and to understand the ops better? So I would, to start off, I would say specifically, if what we're saying to you resonates, but you haven't yet opened your own wallet, then you probably should understand the process of one, what I mean by opening a wallet and what it takes to actually get there. Because it's not, to the point you were making earlier, it's not like downloading an app on your iPhone and logging into your bank account and the bank has done the interface for you. This current interface into this space is so rudimentary. It's like AOL chat rooms calling that the internet and recognizing all the process of getting there. So when you're in this current creative space, you have to understand the decisions your audience has to make to I was going to say ape into this thing, to get involved into this situation you're at, the creative process you get into. If you don't understand your audience, you're going to mess it up. So go back to the principles we teach in Show Launcher, and you have to ask yourself first, why? Why are you getting into it? Why is it relevant? What's happening here? Who's my audience? What are they doing? What would they want to do? What would they be engaged in? Then where? And then finally, what? Therefore, what should I make? What should I be involved in? So to copycat someone else, to follow along with other people's things, or use terminology like roadmap, and you really don't even know what that means, is kind of a foolish process, and you haven't leaned into it enough if you don't understand how to make your own kind of storyline that way.
Yeah, and are you speaking more specifically about how our studio owners can get involved? Yeah, so that's part of why I'm here. I think one of the biggest problems right now is that creative people in general don't understand NFTs very well. So Tim and I together working on educational resources, and we already have a group inside Rev Community called Nifty Space, and I'm working on expanding that even more to create more resources for creative people. But for studio owners, I would say dig in, like go start your own wallet, like Tim said, and put a little bit of money in. I think, am I allowed to say that? Yeah. Because Jakin was telling me this, actually, one of our guys at RevThink, he was saying the money gives me an incentive. Me putting my own money in gives me an incentive to actually understand what's going on. So I started just trading a little bit on Coinbase to understand the different, there's hundreds of currencies, thousands of currencies in this ecosystem. So they all have different features and they interact in certain ways. And if you don't understand, like, oh, this went up and that didn't go up as quite as much, and I still lost, somehow I lost money. So there's understanding that part of the ecosystem. There's understanding the cryptography, the technical side of it. And then there's the culture of just being involved in the conversation on Twitter, on Discord. So there's lots of places to start, and I'd be happy to help you guys dig in. But I will say, make the decision and start to dig in.
The product that you're offering, delivering to your client, you don't understand how that builds up or kind of makes that final delivery to the audience. And here, our engagement, everything from whatever that process is of starting your own wallet to delivering a product, you really can see how the decision you make on the creative side can impact that end user immediately. Get in touch with it. And so therefore the evolution that I'm seeing now on the marketing side, and also call it traditional marketing, is totally changed because of how amazing the dynamics are in this Web3 space. It's just, the audience is transparent. There's no Nielsen ratings telling you if it's relevant or not. You just read your own demographics. Netflix can't hold back these analytics from us. You can see it right in their face. And I don't need a third party Web3 macro mega company to do it for me. The code of the opportunity, the software is there. So as an opportunity right now to get in and understand something, well, to summarize too, someone asked the question, is this something that I should do right now, or is it something that I'm going to have to do later? And that's exactly the question. That's the perfect question. The opportunity you have now is to maybe discover something that you wouldn't have understood, or take advantage of something, a moment in history that's happening while you are controlling a production company. And should you take advantage of that, because this moment of history is being put on your doorstep, if you chose it or not, it's still there. Should you do something different? It's a very relevant question. And the other one, will this change things that I will have to respond to it later? Both of those are yes and yes. And you yourself have to kind of choose. So it's hard and it's fun and it's up and down and it's poppy and it's new and it's going to die and people are going to lose their shirts and people are going to gain a lot of money and all those things that you're hearing the speculation about, all that's going to be true. The kind of question you always have to ask yourself is, who are you going to be? What are you going to be about, and how are we going to get there? So, Emmett, thanks for joining me at NFT LA this week. It's been pretty interesting. I hope that you're enjoying this conversation too. We are having a lot of this conversation on Rev Community. There's an NFT space there. If it's not accessible to you, just hit up Emmett with the link, and Emmett will get you involved in that conversation. And you're having this conversation, you're asking these questions with one another, and you're putting yourself out there to see part of it. So feel free to join Emmett in the Nifty space on Rev Community. Feel free to ask us questions directly. And if you're in NFT LA, hope to see you at the park tonight. Thank you all very much. You have a good night. Have a good week.